And now we welcome Reverend Dr. Michelle Wadleigh.
Hi, good morning. I was trying to forgive myself for the typos in that in that affirmation.
They will be corrected.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, even if you don't forgive me, I forgive me. So that's a step in the right direction. Can I get an amen on that? You know what I mean? Okay. So good morning, all. Good morning. I am so happy to see you all this morning. I have been with you a lot recently, has felt really good. And what I see in the house is Maine and Peru and Mexico and Texas and Brooklyn and Idaho and Florida and Canada. And of course, my town, Denville. And there's a variety of other people from other places. It is just so great. See, right as I start to bitch, moan, and complain about Zoom, then I see y'all. I'm like, okay, shut up now, Michelle. Just shut up and enjoy the gathering as it is. So I'm really happy to see you. I'd like to read to you something from this thing called You, which is one of Ernest Holmes' earliest books, and for me, one of the most precious. It's an easy read, and it's one of the books that I'd give to first-time visitors, or I would recommend to first-time visitors before anything else. And it says here, letting go of all previous mistakes. I know that today I am free and unhindered. I feel the operation of divine love and universal law in my affairs. I know that everything I am doing is governed by love and controlled through law. I am conscious that I am one with all people in love, in essence, and in joy. So let's take those words at this moment and allow them to just enter our being. Living a life where we focus on love, acceptance, and compassion. Not blinded by reality, not blinded by politics, by hatred, by stupidity, not blinded by it, but seeing through it, seeing beyond it, transforming it through our very observation, so that we each become a masterful tool of transforming the conditions of the world. We become a masterful tool, because we look in and through all of it. We breathe a deep, beautiful sigh of connection and belonging. We remember who we are. We remember our essence. And we bring that essence and that power and that love and that compassion through our thinking and speaking to our families, to our neighborhood, to the extended world around us. One interaction at a time. Let us be the peacekeepers, the love weavers in every way possible. Please repeat after me as I speak each word for our peace practice. I am the peace that I wish to see. I know this peace for my family. I know this peace for my community. my community knows this peace for the world. Thank you.
We can spread our love around. We can feel the spiritual sound. We can work till peace has come. We can live and live as one and be alive, light, alive. Nama na nama na nama na nama 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 ya ya la la ya
Man, that is pretty. I know that y'all, let's give them some acknowledgement. Oh my gosh. I know if we were in person, you'd be hearing the applause. That was absolutely beautiful. That was so beautiful. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. So I have two nephews, and these they're gay and they're married, and they recently last year they adopted a child, and after a short time of having this child, the child got taken back, not due to their actions, but the mother, I guess, changed her mind. And so they were very sad. They went through some brokenheartedness, and then they decided to try again. And in trying again, they were given a baby. It's a weird, and I don't have all the technology, and maybe some people in here would know better of what I'm talking about. But they had this new baby that was literally days out of the mother's womb. And the mother didn't want the baby. The mother already had children. She was already stressed. She didn't have the finances or the wherewithal, and was uninterested. So they found out about this baby. They came in, they adopted the baby. The baby was theirs, and they named the baby. And matter of fact, the other day I sent them a picture of a blanket that I'm currently crocheting for that baby. And I sent them a text saying, look what I'm making, or guess who this is for. And I didn't hear back. And then I didn't hear back. And then I didn't hear back. And I thought, oh, that's kind of odd, because they are usually quite responsive when it comes to texting. And they kind of really love me, which is so sweet. As now the current matriarch of my family, I get a little extra special attention. So what happened was they didn't contact me back, because what I didn't know is that a few days ago, they were told that the mom again was changing her mind. And for whatever the reasons. So now the second time they're about to have this baby, and they had set up their home and all the needs, and their spiritual, their church community came together, supplied them with everything they would need for this baby. So they were ready to go. They were ready to go. They were parenting, and they were in love. So here's the thing, depending upon where you are in your life, you have a different concept of that story that I just told. Because we are all weird. We're the seeds of all of us are the same, But depending upon where your seed was planted and depending upon how it was fertilized, it grew differently. You and I grew differently. A seed planted in the East Coast is different than a seed planted in the West Coast, which is different than a seed planted in a Jewish community, which is different than a seed planted in the Midwest. And now I'm only referring to, this country, but of course that extends out. And so what happens is we are reared and we adopt from the atmosphere, from the emotional, the blanket of emotions of humanity. And we are each standing. It's like we go wading into the water, and I don't know about you, but I have some plants that when I water the plant, instead of watering from the top, I sit them in water and I let them absorb water through the roots. It's a very healthy thing to keep the roots healthy. So what happens is you and I are like that kind of plant, and we're standing in water and we're absorbing that water, and it is making us who we are. And especially that's very supported by stories, and I'll get back to that in a second. But what happens is sometimes you and I forget to look down to see, are we standing in the spiritual waters of spirit, clear and crisp and beautiful, or are we standing in toxic, dirty, negatively fed waters? And we forget to look at what's sourcing us. We forget to look at our influence. So go back to my nephews, Amos and Drew. Depending upon your story, depending upon where your seed was planted, where you were reared and your influences, you might think right off, well, they shouldn't have a baby anyway. You might have that story. You might have a story that the mother, no matter what, has the right to have the baby back, no matter what, no matter even whether she's fit or unfit, that because all mothers should have their children. That might be the story you have. You might have a story in general about same-sex marriages. You might have that story. And so what happens is that story and stories like that inform your life, inform your opinions. They influence how you and I interact with the world. So I had a story as a young girl, and some of the women in here will relate to this. And we were going to find a man, that protector, that supplier, that provider, the one who was going to take care of everything. And then with some of us have a story that said that, well, men are dangerous. They're violent. They're not safe. And in the men in the room, you have a story about your expectations about the women in your life. You might not know where the story comes from. I don't know where that story comes from, because it's not like someone pulled me aside at the age of 5 and whispered the story into my ear. That's the problem with these stories and these influences, that we adopt them because we're standing in those dirty, muddy waters, and often they are dirty and muddy. So we adopted and began acting out and choosing from those stories that were obviously, I'm referring to, they were our worldview. But what we didn't do is we didn't question it. We didn't question whether that story was viable or not. Did anyone stop to tell you that life was going to be this hard? Or as you were growing, did you just start tripping off of all over the difficulties of life? Did someone pull you aside and said, don't worry, it's all going to work out. Don't worry. It might be a little challenging, but it'll be okay. Mostly not. So what happens is we've set up our expectations, and in the meantime, our disappointment according to those stories, And so we've set up our expectations, and out of the unmet needs and our unmet expectations comes the upset, the disappointment. we try as we may put our expectations upon another. And then we wonder why they reel against it. Well, they had a different story. And so the way we assess and judge these stories, the way we assess and judge what's going on in our lives, that then our life will be seen and experienced according to that. You following me? Am I getting that? Am I getting through? Am I making logic? Okay. So what happens is, it's very possible that some of the story that you have is wonderful. That's possible, right? But often the painful part comes from the stories that we weren't taught to question. And so when our desire to know more becomes stronger than the fear of what we're questioning, then life will begin to change. So let me bring curiosity, because this is the month of celebrating curiosity as your superpower. So if you're living in a story and you were not reared, or you have not currently developed the temptation to question everything, you continue to live with what was, but with an expectation that it is now. Right? You catch that? You'll bring your old conditioning into this time and wonder why you're unhappy, why you're in pain, why you're disappointed. Because you haven't let go of what was. You've dragged yesterday into today, but you've done it so subtly because it comes through the stories of our conditioning. So every single one of us, we all run dozens upon probably hundreds of these stories. And then these stories set up our expectation or our disappointment about the way life unfolds. However, if you can begin to understand that those stories were absorbed, like standing, waiting in that water, if you can realize that you absorbed it, but not consciously, and instead of going with them, instead you turn around to question them, you will be able to ask yourself, does that, I was going to say, does that hold water, right? Isn't that the saying, when something holds water? Didn't mean to say that together like that, but that's what came out. So what happens is we begin, if you can cultivate curiosity, you will question the viability of the things in your life that you didn't think you could question. You will question the viability of thinking that you were supposed to be one way, that life was supposed to be easy. You will question the viability, but do I really deserve to be sick? And all of these things are questions because it's riddled with the poisonous "I'm not enough" that still kind of trickles in there. But if you can cultivate curiosity, and instead of thinking, wow, do I get to think that the man in my life, because I had one man of great influence in my life, and this is just a typical story out of the 50s. And what he knew is he knew there were two types of women, one that you married and one that you had fun with. And they both could not be consistent or contained within the same woman. And so that was a serious struggle for him. And it was a struggle for me in my relationship with him, because I was the fun one that wanted to be married. But in his mind, he was conditioned to think that those two couldn't coexist. So that story influenced the health or the lack of health in his relationships. Do some of you have stories like that? I'm just curious. Does anybody have a story that that's been running you, but you didn't think to question it? Yeah. And there's a lot of people without their faces on the screen, but I'm pretty sure that we all have stories like this. So here's where here's where, because this is also the month. And if you haven't signed up again, I can't encourage you enough. And Neil, maybe you want to drop the link in there for the judge-free month or somebody. When we learn to question our mind, we expand our expectations. We expand who we are being. We expand our relationship with that which empowers us. Curiosity is the cure for being judgmental. That's for sure. So, but the practice, the daily practice, is the practice of not being judgmental. Now, this piece is not new, what I'm about to tell you, but I offer it again as a tool. When something comes up, and if you thought, well, we'll go back to my nephews, and you listen to the story of my nephews, and you think to yourself, oh, they shouldn't have a child anyway. 2 men shouldn't have a child. Let's just say you think that. That instead of letting yourself really hover in that thinking, to think to yourself, that's not good, that's not bad, it just is. Try that right now in your mind. You can whisper it since I can't hear you. Just say it out loud and feel into that. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. And as we bring that practice to the activity of our lives, it loosens our hold. We can begin to pull ourselves up by the roots, get ourselves out of that dirty, toxic waters, and replant ourselves in the living waters that are clear and beautiful and free, which does not make you, doesn't make you at the mercy. I don't know why I feel compelled to say this, but whenever I talk about non-judgment, I know, because I've heard your questions over the years, somebody's thinking, oh, but what about that person I don't really want to be around? Or what about that person that's hurtful? I am never, ever, ever saying that you and I are supposed to be walking around like the hippies of the 60s or the 70s with flowers in our hair and love everywhere all the time without question, and then being at the mercy of mean people or cruel people. No, this is not about being a doormat. Let me remind you, because when we are in charge, when we take responsibility, when we cease being at the mercy of those stories, what happens is we gain personal power and freedom to choose. Because then you can listen to the story about my gay nephews having a child, and instead of immediately forming an opinion against that idea, you can look at it and go, I wonder how that works. And you can begin to cultivate a sense of wonderment. I love that sentence. Well, I wonder why he said that. I wonder why she walked out of the meeting. I wonder why that person is driving that way. So as we cultivate wonderment and curiosity, we can let go of some of the judgment. But this isn't a quick fix. By the way, I just have to stop for 1 second. Rita Woodward, I see you in here. And Mama, I'm so happy to see you. It's been a long time. I just want to acknowledge her. It's been a long time. So when we do this and we cultivate this, we have more and more and more freedom to then redirect our attention. But if, I don't know, and I love the statement from Landmark Education, but when we have our already listening, When we walk into a situation and we think we know the way it's going to go, you know what your husband's going to say, you know what your wife is going to say, you know what your teacher is going to say, you know what that person's going to say. And instead of allowing for the interaction, you show up already cocked and ready to react. Not a lot of freedom there. And a lot of pain. So curiosity as your superpower, it tames your inner judge. Curiosity tames your inner judge. When your inner judge is tamed, the you that you were meant to be is more revealed than ever before. Does that make sense? This is a practice. This is a lifelong practical practice. I'm hesitating here for a second because I'm sure someone has opinions about certain things where you feel righteous about them. You don't want to let go of them. So that might be so, but you have to ask yourself, does the righteousness of this opinion support me? Or does the righteousness of this opinion keep me from love and joy and compassion? And my guess, if you practice some radical self-honesty, you will find that the culmination of your opinions and your judgments have held you captive. You have been held captive. And if the science of mind is anything, it is a philosophical teaching that wants its adherents to have freedom. Freedom to choose the path. Freedom to choose what pond of water we are standing in. Freedom to decide the logical next unfolding of our lives. I'm just seeing that if I feel like I left anything out. So I want to ask, is there any question? Does anyone have a question about curiosity, about being judgmental, about having stories and how those stories run us? Any questions in the room? Either you're shy or I covered the bases. Okay. Oh, Evelyn has a question.
Yeah. So what about when I feel in judgment of someone else's judgment, right? It seems a little convoluted, but I was having a conversation with someone. They were being super, super judgy. And I was like, they're being judgy. Seems silly, but that's kind of yeah.
Yeah, I hear you.
How's that work?
Well, the funny thing is, how many of us, me included, have judged other people's judging? How often do you judge your own judging? So what this is thank you, Evelyn, great question. So that's our humanity. We're going to do that. But this practice begins to discipline the mind. It's a muscle. Your mind is a muscle. So you will not automatically stop judging, but you can quickly pull back from it. You can quickly not subscribe to it, or you'll recognize, oh wow, I'm judging. Oh wow, look what I'm doing. I wonder why I'm attached to my opinion. So we all judge all the time. There is no not judging. The exercise is to judge mindfully, to use discernment. When you're choosing a dance partner, when a gazillion years ago, when I used to go ballroom dancing, I didn't want to say yes to everyone asked. I wanted to say yes to the person who might ask me, who, when I watched them, I knew they were a good dance leader. I knew they could lead me around the floor. So I was making a judgment, but I was making a judgment call. I was discerning. But it is exercising the mind. So here's the question. Here's the question you get to ask yourself. Because close your eyes real quick, actually. Everybody just close your eyes for 1 second. And please imagine yourself when you are in full out judgment of someone or something. Just feel the impact of judging on your body. Feel it. If I had a couple of minutes, I'd do an exercise, but feel it. Be aware of how you judge maybe politicians, how you judge people about how they, if they litter, how people judge, how you judge people who treat their families kindly or not kindly. But the judgments I want you to pay attention to are the heavy ones. Your tendencies toward finding someone or something wrong. Your tendencies to make yourself superior through your judgments. Pay attention to that real quick in your body and feel into that. And then when you're ready, open your eyes. Now, if you really paid attention, you will likely recognize how heavy that practice is. Now, I've been practicing non-judgment for so long, and yes, I still judge and I catch myself, but I have become acutely aware of how I feel when I'm in my righteousness, even if it's a quick thing. I know the weight of that habit and I don't want it. I don't want it because it interrupts my life. It interrupts my love. It interrupts my health. It interrupts my peace of mind. Because if I don't question the story that I had developed that allowed me to judge, I am at the mercy of it. If you can pay attention and tune into your body temple and see how that lands on you, then you can choose to judge accordingly and to find freedom from that and begin to cultivate curiosity and wonderment. Absolute, beautiful wonderment. Yes? Will you practice? Can I get you to agree to practice, to watch your mind? If you're, and actually, you know what I'm going to ask you to do? I'm going to ask you to go into the reactions and give me a thumbs up if you are willing to practice watching your mind. Okay, I see, yep, I see some thumbs coming up. Beautiful, thank you. Beautiful. Those who practice the most finds the most amount of freedom. Hear that. Those of you who practice the most are giving yourself the gift of freedom. So let's take this into prayer. Okay. So I know for each and every one of us right now that there is a power, a presence, a love, a glorious flow of good and very good. It flows in, through, and as each person that I'm seeing now and each person to hear this conversation in the future. I know without a fact that the stories that have held us captive are now being surrendered. They are now being given up. They are now being neutralized by our choice to be more, by our choice to be free, by our choice to live an empowered life that is the very heart of our being, of love, compassion, and joy and peace. This is our reality. This is our reality. Why? Because we claim it as so. I know for each one of us that we determine ourselves as worthy. We determine ourselves as worthy. We don't wait for something. We don't mamby-pamby around it. You and I determine that we as individuals are worthy of the freedom and the beauty of life itself. Without question, without doubt, without fear. We are worthy of the beauty, the power, and the love of life itself. Oh, this is so good. This is good and very good. And I let this word be so right here, right now, into this wonderful, wonderful life that we have. And so it is.